Hello and good morning. Welcome to Virtual Coffee. I'm your host, Cheryl Leong from the Growth Hub, and there's my little coffee mug. It says love half full. And we have a special guest joining me today for Virtual Coffee, Nina Christian. How are you, Nina?
I'm really well, thank you so much, Cheryl.
Love having you here, Nina. The topic that we're going to be talking about and having a bit of a chat about is content marketing. And I know that your whole business is around being able to market yourself and being able to have content that really resonates with the audience. A big focus of the coffees that we have with our guests is around that marketing side of things, because at the end of the day, marketing is really the steam engine that gets people's businesses rolling there. But Nina, give us a little bit of a quick summary about what it is that you do to help people in their businesses too.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, yes, I'm a marketer. I've run an agency for a very long time. So I founded a marketing agency in 2000 after being a marketer for several years in different industries. That I was a general manager at a sports marketing agency and in tourism marketing. 2000 decided to start an agency. So that's my company Braveda, which turns officially 21 this year. So
Wow.
an adult. And obviously we've had a few iterations. Content marketing wasn't a thing back in the early 2000s. We were just getting on the internet. And anyway, so long story short, various iterations and evolutions over the time. And in the last, for probably a few years, been focusing a lot more on content, because that's really where one of the biggest shifts that's happened in marketing. And so, working with different types of companies and organizations, helping them in that area. And more recently in the training and mentorship, taking a lot of those principles that marketers traditionally know and helping business owners, entrepreneurs and other, marketers, helping those types of business understand them and apply them, because it's more than just the tactics. It's really, taking a lot of timeless marketing principles and applying them to our modern context so that they're a lot more effective. So that's what I do professionally. I do more and more in the training and mentorship space these days, but at the same time still run a practicing agency doing the do.
Goodness me. So a lot happening as well, obviously, in business and in life. You've got multiple children, which I've discovered as well. And that's incredible. I mean, I think this is the one thing that people go into business for, is to be able to create a lifestyle business. But we all find that we so often we know how important marketing is, but we don't know what to really do. And this is the thing we want to address today, is what are the 5 biggest mistakes that business owners, and I think it's important to also note that we acknowledge that you're doing a whole lot, but let's try to avoid some of these things that can really save you a lot of time and effort as well.
Yeah, well, this is really a great topic for a chat today, Cheryl, because you're right. I'm a mum. I have 5 children. I work part-time. And so I wouldn't be able to do this and have not just, be able to do what lights me up professionally, but able to have that impact if I didn't have a way to do it sustainably. So I'm really passionate about helping business owners and anyone who's got a message to share do it and set themselves up so that it is with ease and sustainability, so that they're not getting burnt out and tired, so that their work ultimately has more impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's walk through the 5 core sort of mistakes that you've been able to see over the last 20 years in marketing.
Yeah,
I think being able
sure.
to share that. Let's jump into it.
So before we jump into the 5 mistakes, can I just quickly set the scene a little bit and just quickly touch on what is content? Because it definitely, I think we have, everyone I find has a preconceived idea about what content is. For some people it's social media or Instagram, other people it's their blog or their podcast, or that they'll come with a particular paradigm as to what content is. And essentially content is anything that you are using to communicate to your audience that's not sales and promotional in nature. So the main types of content are, it can be educational, it can be entertainment, and the highest value of type of content, and we'll talk more a little bit about that later, is this kind of transformational content. But essentially that's what content is, and the others are just the vehicles and the channels. So whether the content can be written, it can be audio, it can be visual, it can be imagery, it can be podcast, blog, social media, anything of the above, and that's all content. So that's when we talk about that, there's so much choice and there's such a big marketplace. It's really important just to get on that, get on the same page, and that will provide the context to the mistakes. So kicking off with the mistakes, the number one hands down mistake that I see time and time again when it comes to content is not having a clear strategy when it comes to your content. Absolutely. And this is so important because it's like your overall roadmap for why are you even doing this in the first place. And if you're doing it because somebody told you to do it, or you read that it's a necessary, or it's the flavor of the month, then that's very short-sighted, because you're not going to understand how to get the best leverage out of it. And you're just going into it from a very tactical doing it perspective. And so just to understand what I mean by strategy, it's really about having the end in mind. I mean, we love Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. It's really thinking about what are your business goals? What are your commercial goals? And then from there, reverse engineering what needs to happen for your audience to get there, and how is marketing going to support that, and how is your content going to help you reach your marketing goals. So definitely having that that strategy before you start creating is so paramount, and that is hands down the number one way I see so many people waste energy and not get results and then wonder why.
Yeah, and I like to add to that, because part of the marketing strategy is also really understanding who your audience is, right? Your target market and what their pain points are as well, so that you can get your messaging really focused and pinpointed to what it is that they're feeling and the solution that you're able to bring.
That's right. Like that all comes under that big overarching banner of strategy. So who are you talking to? What is the product, what is the positioning, exactly what are their problems? All of that comes under the strategy. But then also, how are you going to create your messaging and things like that to be able to address that? And how are you going to get that out? And well, that's probably the next step when we actually get a plan of the strategy. Yes. But what are the big things that you're going to do to help your market understand how you can make their life or business better? So that's just so important.
Yeah, I think it's something that we don't realize as business owners. Sometimes when we're getting into business, we sort of just go, this is my skill, this is what I have to offer, and that's it. And marketing is sort of a thing that I sort of know that I need to do. I think it's an important reminder to go is, for successful businesses, you've got to look at it holistically to go, what is my strategy? And marketing is such a big part of that strategy, to be able to link then, the what you do operationally, and then the actual sort of fulfillment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And strategy is more than just even the marketing side. I mean, it is marketing, but a marketing strategy will cover things like not just the promotion. That's one of the 4 Ps that the marketers have been trained in for decades, but there's the product, and do you have product market fit? How is that priced? We have one of the P's called place, which is your distribution strategy. How are you going to deliver that product? And then comes the 4th P of promotion. And then there are arguably other P's that people have attached onto that as well. But yeah, that they are the cornerstone things that you need to look at before you go to market with your content.
Awesome. So first thing that you see people not having a marketing strategy in place.
Yeah. And the one thing that I'll add to that is having a strategy will help you understand what to measure. Because if you're not measuring the success and impact of what you're doing, you have no way of knowing whether you're successful and whether you're moving closer to your goals. If you are just going on your gut feeling or your hunch, it's probably not enough. So understanding you don't have to measure everything, but having a couple of key metrics. I generally advise businesses, don't try and, data-driven marketing is a thing, but it can be very complex and overwhelming. Choose 2 or 3 key metrics. So basically things that you're going to measure. Call them KPIs, call them metrics, whatever you like, but choose probably about 2 or 3 numbers in your business when it comes to marketing, and diligently watch and observe those. And if they're moving in a positive trajectory, that's great. And if they're not, reevaluate and don't keep doing the same thing for too long if it's not actually affecting those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 2, biggest
Number
mistake.
2, yep. The big mistake is they don't have a solid brand, a strong sense of brand when they create their content, before they create their content. And what ends up happening is they might have the best content in the world, but if it's not underpinned and undergirded by a brand, and I'm not just talking about logos and graphics, so hear me out, I'm talking about more than that, it's not going to have the cut through that that audiences need these days. So when I talk about brand, there's different, I guess, definitions and things that people put on that, but it's at the core of it is, how does your brand, your company, your product, everything you do make people feel? Like, what is the emotional response that is evoked in people when they hear or see your brand? And that you get to craft that narrative by different things, including your logo, including your visuals, including your brand voice. The personality of your brand incorporates the values and what you stand for and how that's communicated, and also the value that your brand brings, which we like to call the brand promise, which is, this is what your brand says it does it actually do that? That has a really, really big impact on the holistic experience. So it's not just about the logos that people see on the social media or the carefully curated and color coordinated Instagram. Your brand experience is every single touch point that anybody has with your brand in any shape or form, whether that's on email, whether it's on the telephone, whether it's on a newsletter, whether it's on a website, whether it's an in-person meeting, whether it's at an event, is that every touch point and experience giving them an aligned and congruent experience, which is shaping how they feel and how they perceive your brand? Or is it random and ad hoc? And if it's random and ad hoc, it's not serving you, because you're not leveraging a lot of what you could be getting with your content. So bringing this into content, every time someone sees a piece of content, it's an opportunity to reinforce that brand and what that brand stands for. And so, yes, of course, the visuals is really important. You can't get away with sloppy anymore in the same way that you could maybe 10, 15 years ago. Everybody's expectation and perception around how a brand should present has increased. So it's really important to have tight and aligned visuals across all the platforms. Firstly, so it really strengthens that brand identity. But secondly, so that every single time people see a piece of your content, it's not just the content itself that's giving the value, which is really important, but it's another another tick, like in terms of a touch point, that they are seeing it and they are registering that your brand is there. So, for example, what I'm trying to say by that, Google, there's an old rule of marketing that people need to engage with you 7 times before they'll be prepared to take an action. Google research will say now that it's more like 21 to 24 times. And many have put that number a lot higher. So they are not always going to see and pore over a piece of content and read every text. They're just going to sometimes scan. People, in your feed, you just scan stuff and you dismiss it. You don't even read it, but it does register in your subconscious. And so if your stuff is strongly brand aligned, then every single encounter, even if it's that fleeting scrolling, still serves a purpose of repetition of your brand, of strengthening that brand identity, which, it has other effects around memorability and recognition. So not just starting with the logo and colors. It's a mistake just to think, well, I just have to have a pretty logo and have everything the same color. Having a really strong brand that speaks to people and having a brand that connects emotionally. I speak a lot about that. So I won't go too deep into that here, but there is an art and a science to it, and it's not that hard. Like I train people, like in my program, when business owners and marketers come to me to teach them this stuff, one of the first, they want to get to content creation, but I don't let them until they have this brand thing nailed, and I take them through a process to show them how to do it. You don't have to get Saatchi and Saatchi or pay $25,000 for an agency to do it, or even $5,000, but there are principles that you need to have, which is this consistent brand, which then ups the ante of your whole content, and it makes it so much more effective. Because if you can communicate with people at an emotional level, then you are the guard is coming down. There's a lot more trust there, and people will receive what you have to say. And final point on this one, we won't talk as long about the other ones, but this is a really big, important one, so that's why I'm spending a bit more time on it. The way people are consuming information anywhere has changed now, and they're not just about the facts and the figures and the information. They are looking for connection, and that's one of the things that's been the biggest shift in the post-pandemic era, is that people are looking for genuine connections with brands. They're looking for brands they can trust. And again, I won't go into the research, but it just shows how important it is. So anyone who's got a message who wants to cut through, taking the time to get your brand right before you do it will serve you in such good stead, because then everything that you do henceforth is built on a solid foundation. And that's, going full circle to this big mistake, is people go and do all of that work, but they don't have that solid foundation, so they don't get the same ROI from it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is such a critical point again. And how much of this, is there the overlap with the business brand and your personal brand?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and the answer is going to differ, obviously, depending on the type of business and the type of brand and the type of person. I come up and I help people work through this a lot, because even if you are building a company brand, and you're building a brand for exit, for example, which a lot of people are, and I've done one of those myself, built a brand and sold it. There is a shift now. When I built a brand in the .com boom, it was about the brand. It was like I started in 2001, sold it in 2008, and I didn't want to be the face or the name or anything like that. Whereas these days, very different story. People want to know, even if it's not a social enterprise or social impact or anything like that, it's a financial services firm, or they're manufacturing shoes or whatever it is. People want to know who's behind the business, what makes them tick, why did they start the business, why does it exist. And so increasingly, and in a lot of the training that I do in the more corporate area around brand with brands and things like that, is encouraging them that they need to tell those stories, because that's what engenders trust. So whether there is going to be a place, whether it's the personal brand, everybody has a personal brand. It's just how you use it, and are you building that as the main thing, or are you using that to support and work in tandem with another brand? And if that's the case, like if you've got a mid-sized firm or a smallish firm, maybe you've got 10 or 20 employees and there's a brand, but there's also you, then a lot of the elements and the values of the brand are going to translate and be similar across the both. But there is going to be a time and place to have both. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bigger conversation, but ultimately, whether or not you have a personal brand in terms of a logo and a business and a website is one thing, and you may, but even if you don't, you still do have a personal brand of some sort, because your personal brand is how people perceive you and what you're communicating. And so just being mindful that you're always in control of that and you get to create that is a very empowering place to be.
Yeah, I think it's really important how you've said it. We've evolved as well, because it was so much part about okay, so focus on the logo and this is the business, and here's my card. But it's people want to, they're I mean, when I look at a brand and a business, I'm almost sort of itching to scratch behind
Yep.
the logo and go, who's behind it? There's the person that I can really connect to.
Yep.
And again, that's why so many of these sort of networking type businesses and systems are doing so well and have become so popular, because people want to connect on a
Absolutely.
one-on-one basis. So awesome. Really love the message around that. So Nina, 3.
Okay. So the third big mistake that a lot of business owners make when it comes to their content is they don't understand what type of content to put out, which is how I mentioned at the top when we're talking about strategy, and there's different types of content. There's vast arrays of content. There's entertainment content, there's education. They think that putting out information is enough, or they think that putting out connection content is enough. And connection content is really important, which is, what we just spoke about. It's really, helping people understand who you are, what makes you tick, what's important, and all the rest. And there's a place for all of those, but they underestimate the importance of one type of content, which is really the authority building content, which is the credibility building content. It's the one that actually showcases not just information, but your expertise and your ability to help people solve problems. And, that is the favorite type of content that I love and that I like to talk about and I like to help people produce. And, the best way to explain it would be thought leadership content, in that you're not just regurgitating what someone else has said. And again, there's a time and place for that, and that can be very powerful as well. But don't just, repeat what someone else has said verbatim, repeat it verbatim, but add your own thoughts to that, acknowledge and give attribution, but add your own thoughts to that, because essentially that's what is going to set you apart and engender that trust is, being able to communicate in a way that people see you as the go-to expert. They see you as the answer to their problems. And if you're just putting out, random blog posts that are SEO optimized for the purpose of, getting traffic to your website, well, that's one tactic. But what happens when people actually get to your website and they don't really connect with their content? It's not going to drive them to take actions, and it's not going to drive them to be a repeat customer, and it's not going to drive them to spread your message. So you really want to focus on content that is going to deliver some sort of transformational value. And at its core, help people shift a perspective or enlarge their understanding of the topic that you are an expert in, because there's a very powerful principle around reciprocity, which is if you can be the one that helps someone to see something in a new way, or for that penny to drop, they will always attribute that to you. And then you are in the driver's seat when it comes to them wanting to make a purchase. You will be a reputable and credible source that they will go to at least consider. So yeah, having the right type of content, which for me, the number one type of content hands down that, delivers the most commercial return. Again, a whole nother topic, longer than our time today, but is thought leadership and authority building content. Yeah.
I really love that topic, and I love to be able to spend more time on what thought leadership is and how people even sort of work out what they're an expert in and what they can talk about. Because I think a lot of people have it in their head. They're like, yeah, I know, I can do this with my eyes closed, but how to be able to verbalize it or share it in content form, that's probably something that people struggle with, because we're not all natural writers or speakers and all of that. It would be really, really great to get your thoughts on how, people can go from it's all in my head to here's really incredible value information that you can use.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So thought leadership that people are probably not seeing. Is it the fact that they're not seeing themselves as thought leaders, or
I think a lot in the past, a lot of people have thought that as being beyond them, as that's something for prolific authors or keynote speakers, or I'm not, Brené Brown or Simon Sinek or Arianna Huffington, like, what have I got to say? not realizing that everyone actually does have something to contribute, and it's really important to go through that process if you want to do this and you want to be around for the long haul and you want to build a brand of substance, and you want to build a brand that's credible, is to tap into what that uniqueness and that authority, that's, you know, this intersection between your, you know, your experience, your passion, and your skill, and bring that out in terms of and put meaning on that in a way that it's going to help other people. So a lot of people, when I first meet them, they say, well, I never really thought of myself as a thought leader. Like, there are a lot of people, like even in my, you know, my programs and things like that, they didn't necessarily come for that. They might have come for the systems, because, like, you know, I have lots of different, you know, great systems that help people do that. But then, like, they're like, oh, I realize now that for my charity to grow or for my brand to get noticed, I need to be the face and I need to be the voice of that. And now I understand that I need to be a thought leader, because it actually takes a lot of pressure off. You're not trying to make yourself out as a celebrity. You're just turning up to help people in the best way that you can. And obviously, the more you practice it and the more, you know, you tap into some principles that are going to help you to do that, the better you get at it and the more natural it comes. And then when you actually start to see that, yes, you know, what you have is helping people, or it's communicating the message that's inspiring people to action, the more encouraged you get to be, and then the more you embrace that voice, and then you go deeper. And it's one of those things that the more you allow it to flow through you, the more it comes. It's you become a river, you know, rather than a swamp.
Yeah, and it's the mindset, right? Like, we all have this imposter syndrome where we're like, no, we might be starting up in business or whatever. It's to be able to move past that and move past that maybe fear or doubt, and say, I'm here for a reason, and I'm offering value to the people that I'm serving.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true, Cheryl.
Yeah, awesome. Number 4 of biggest things.
Okay, the number 4th mistake is that I see people time and time again, is that they are not consistent when it comes to their content. And this one is a really big doozy. You can see they're all really big, important mistakes to avoid, but this one is a very tactical, practical mistake that can make or break your content. So what I see time and time again is people get motivated, they get fired up, and they go, yes, I realize I need to go create content. And they go and create content, and they go out guns a blazing, and then they get really tired after a couple of months, and they can't sustain it, and they're not consistent. And that is a huge, very easy mistake to avoid, because what you want to do is make sure that, you know, when you're doing a strategy, when you're planning out your content, is that you do it in a way that it's going to be sustainable and scalable. And so you want to start small and build out from there. It is much better. And this is one thing that, you know, I'm sure that you'll understand this when I, you know, explain it, but not a lot of people realize people have what's called like a cumulative memory, and they will remember more of what they saw over, say, a full year if you were just posting less once a month, even once a fortnight over a year, than if you posted really intensely for, you know, 3 months, several times a week on all the different platforms and things like that, and then you stop because you couldn't sustain it. People will hold your brand in much higher regard because there is that sense of consistency, reliability, you're showing up and all the rest. When you do that, you might put out a whole lot of fancy content, but if you can't sustain it, it can actually have a damaging effect on your brand, because the unspoken thing is that, you know, people do this and then they don't do that. So it's really much better to avoid that mistake. It's really easy to avoid the mistake. The other mistakes, you know, require a bit more forethought and, you know, planning and help. But this mistake is really easy to avoid on your own. Once you decide what you're going to do, just stick to it. And I don't say you have to post at, you know, 10 a.m. on a Thursday and it has to be to the minute. That's not what I'm talking about. Whether, you know, that might ebb and flow according to the seasons. We're all human, stuff happens, we get tired or we get busy or something comes up or whatever it is. But having a rhythm and a consistency broadly around what you do will serve you really, really well, because they'll be like guardrails where, you know, okay, if you fall off the wagon once, and, you know, hopefully you have good systems and processes to tap into that will help you not to do that. And that's key. And that's a bit of a sneak preview of my fifth mistake. But if you have things in place to help you be consistent, it will make it easier. But at the very least, you can commit to, you know, doing less more often than trying to bite off too much and more than you can chew. That's the one that I see. And I see that the most with a lot of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people start out. That's probably where I see that mistake made the most, more so than in bricks and mortar businesses with teams and things like that. They probably more just don't do anything. That's their problem. But with a lot of solopreneurs, there's this big burst of activity, then nothing. And then there's this big burst of activity. So avoiding that and going for consistency will serve you so much better. I see this time and time again. I see people who just choose one platform and post the right stuff, you know, with the right things in place, you know, literally once a week, and, you know, get significant business and growth and opportunities and connection from that, because it's done consistently over a period of time. So that's a very easy mistake to fix. And I hope your listeners and viewers enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I think that so much it's almost like, you know, doing workouts and exercise, where we also go gung-ho and we're like, I'm going to exercise 7 days a week and we'll do it for 3 weeks, and then it's just like, but
that's totally one of my favorite analogies
yes.
is the whole fitness thing. 100%. You are better doing, you know, I love my CrossFit, but you are better doing that once a week for a year than you are doing it 5 times a week for a month and then giving up. So, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. The big number, I'm a bit tied up. Number 5.
Yeah, number 5. Well, I already gave you a sneak preview, is they don't have the systems and support in place to make it sustainable. So we talked at the top of the episode about doing our marketing in a very human way and a way with ease, in a way that lights us up. Now, I can tell you, being a hands-on mum of 5 kids, if I had to sit down and reinvent the wheel every time I wanted to produce something or promote something or distribute something, that would send my brain into mental gymnastics. It would just tie it up in knots. It would freeze. It would go, it's too hard. I can't
I've just got the shivers just hearing you talking about all of that. Yeah,
it's relating through the screen.
Yes.
Whereas if you take the time to set up a system, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very, very simple. And you just do that consistently and build the muscle, coming back to the fitness analogies, building up that muscle for doing it. It will help you with your consistency, but it will also help with the systematization of your business. And I'm sure that's something that you talk about a lot with your audience. Yes, it's so important.
Absolutely.
And part of that is ensuring you have the right people for doing the right thing. And that's going to be, you know, how long is a piece of string question. It's going to be very different for someone who's starting doing absolutely everything on their own, to someone who might have an assistant, to someone who might have a small team with a few contractors, to someone who has a small permanent team. It's going to range, but working out what you're going to do and being realistic about what you can achieve with the resources that you have. And if you want to achieve more, putting in place the right resource. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see time and time again, which your audience may or may not relate to, is getting the wrong people to do the wrong people for the wrong task. So we've talked a lot about, and I've given you some background around, you know, what makes, you know, good content and where a lot of people go wrong with that. Or can you imagine that just going to get somebody who's, you know, not trained and doesn't have any experience in marketing and saying, here, can you go and run my social media and build my brand online, is completely the wrong way to go about it, because that person is just at best going to resort to a few tactics that they might have seen, but not understand, you know, the holistic picture. So, and then even within marketing itself, there are so many different specialities, you know, like someone who's good at strategy may not be a great copywriter, and someone who's great at copywriting is probably not a gun video editor, and someone who's got an editing skill is probably not a creative and a designer. And so all of these things, and that's just a few, there's probably, you know, there's, you know, a good few dozen different specialities even within content marketing, let alone the broader marketing. So having the right person for the right task, and then, you know, constructing a system that's simple and repeatable and documented, And there, you know, there are a few key systems that, you know, I you know, design and teach and train on, which are the ones that will really carry your marketing and carry your business. But which system it is probably at this stage less important than that you have a system. And so working out and just becoming systems minded in your marketing and content, even if it's not the right system initially, at least you can tweak and build it and optimize it. But where people go wrong is they try to do it, and they try to do it from scratch every time, and they try to do it on their own, and it's just completely exhausting. Whereas when you have a system, you're less dependent on the person as well. So even if you do have need someone to do some, you know, video editing or some creatives or some social media posts or some blog copy or whatever it is, you know, if you have a very neat system for that, you are less person dependent, because you're not relying on everything up in their head for them to know your business and what you do. When you have it in a system which is clearly outlined, the person who can do it is way more, what do you call it, like replaceable, in a way that if someone then up and leaves, your whole business isn't, your whole marketing doesn't stop, because you literally have your system that someone else can neatly slot into. Because that happens, people get sick, or people can't do something or whatever, so you don't want to be at the mercy of that, and a system is a safeguard that prevents that from happening.
Yeah, I mean, all of this really resonates with what we do at the Growth Hub. As you said, you know, we're all about having the right people, the right talent and team, and then the systems. We talked about strategy before, and with the three of them all combined, it creates something that's really incredible and allows your business to grow. So I think that's such a key point. Another key point. So Nina, I think that's important that we highlight what those mistakes are. Like, what do you do to be able to help businesses to avoid that and put them on the right path?
Yeah, sure. So I personally, like you can see, I'm very passionate about this, because it's one of the things that really makes the biggest difference. A, whether you love doing your marketing and your business, and B, whether your message gets out and can then have that impact that you want it to have in the world, which ultimately, when it does, it lights you up. And so for me, that's why I spend a lot more of my time these days training people in all of these things. So, you know, I have different, I have programs, I have a free class, and I think we're going to do something together, which is going to actually take people deeper into this, of actually a lot of the how to, you know, create authority building content, and what kind of systems you need and things like that. I'm really excited. So I have, you know, if you go to my website, ninachristian.com, you'll see a whole bunch of resources that'll be able to help you there. And I think there should be a link below after we publish this, which will show you how you can get onto the masterclass that Cheryl and I are going to do together, which will help you go deeper into all of this.
Yeah, I'm really excited, because I think there's so many sort of critical points that you've highlighted here, but ones that can be easily avoided as well with the right direction, and importantly, then the right strategy and the systems in place to bring it all together. It doesn't need to be overwhelming and exhausting.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Nina. It's been absolutely wonderful. I love the energy. I love all the nuggets of gold and the caffeine hit we're getting here. 5 tips on the biggest mistakes that you're making as business owners in terms of your content marketing, and then also how we can avoid them as well. If you're really keen to find out, we are working on a workshop together here, and we'll send out details very soon. Any comments, whichever, pop them down in the comment section below. I'll also include Nina's website if you want to see a little bit more about what she does and you want to be able to work with her. So thank you so much, Nina. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will see you again very, very soon. Thank you all who's joined us today. Take care and have an amazing Wednesday. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Cheryl. Bye, everyone.